Welcome in here on the Sportscasters Club YouTube program. Great to have you with us this afternoon. This is the big story we're going to talk about today. Baseball broadcasters out of control. Out of control. And I'm sure you're going to probably say, I was thinking the same thing because it was so evident. And we're going to talk about this. But hopefully it's something that will improve because as baseball fans, certainly as broadcasters, I'm tuned into it and you're going to see what I'm talking about. But as baseball fans, we deserve better. We truly deserve better. So that's going to be the main story today. We're going to talk about baseball broadcasters out of control to start the season. We're also going to touch on a couple other things as we see here. We're going to start with a special bonus that's both funny and painful. I don't know which is more, the pain or the humor, but you're going to see in just a second. We're also going to talk about two high-profile baseball fights, money fights. And if you've been following the headlines this week, you know what I'm talking about, but we're going to touch on these two. And then before we go, I'm going to discuss quickly the New York baseball prediction that I made here on the program the other day. And then I was going back and forth with a former broadcast partner the other day, and he said I'm absolutely nuts to make this prediction. And so we're going to talk about it. We're going to discuss this prediction. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think maybe some of you will have the same view as I do after we go through it. But we're going to see. But we're going to start with the special bonus today, something that's going to be funny and painful for you. Let's take a look.
Steven Jackson's David. Reggie Miller's looking good. He shoots a three, and it's good.
This is Boom Goes the Dynamite, a hilarious video.
Later, he gets the rebound, passes it to the man, shoots it, and boom goes the dynamite.
And the reason that video is so painful, and you can watch the whole thing on YouTube. I didn't want to play the whole thing right there, but he is so overwhelmed and so overmatched that the entire broadcast was like that, where he's huffing and puffing. And I would always start out my sportscasting classes, whether it was at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting, Marist College, Fordham University. I would always start with that clip as an icebreaker and play it for the students. And the whole clip is about 5 minutes long. It's this college student doing this broadcast. He's delivering the sports, and he is completely overmatched. And by the end of it, the students would be on the floor laughing. I didn't want to play the whole thing here, but take a look at it if you have a chance. Boom Goes the Dynamite is the name of it. And it was always a great icebreaker. And then I would tell the students, this is the perfect example of how not to do it. And now let's spend the entire semester discussing how you want to approach sports broadcasting. So that was Boom Goes the Dynamite. But the main story today is this: baseball broadcasters out of control. Out of control. This morning I turned on the highlights. I like to get a recap. I watched a lot of baseball yesterday, but I like to get a feel for what's going on around the league, around the major leagues. And so I turned on the highlights this morning on the MLB network. And I was blown away how every single highlight started, they start highlights obviously early in the game, and then they proceed to what happens late in the game. And they start right away, first inning, guy hits a home run, and the broadcasters absolutely screaming, yelling, out of control. And I thought, I was actually, during some of them, I was doing some other things. And I turned and looked at the TV to see if maybe this was a game-winning home run. No, it wasn't a game-winning home run. It was a home run in the first inning. And the broadcaster is beside himself, going bonkers. And I thought, come on, this is just ridiculous. This is ridiculous. You've got to match the moment. The first game of the season, yes, everyone is excited. Everyone is amped up. They've got jitters, even broadcasters have butterflies. There's the anticipation, the excitement. But in the first inning, a home run does not warrant the kind of reaction like this gentleman here that we see on this picture, screaming at the top of their lungs, going just crazy. And it just does not match the moment. I used to discuss this topic with students, and I used to play a famous clip from a USC football game. And the clip, if you remember, where the band is on the field and it was a turnover. And the reason I played that is because halfway through the clip, the broadcaster got so excited, so out of control, that he had to lower his tone to rematch the action. You always want to give yourself another level to go up. And that was what I was trying to teach them, why I always played that and then others. I taught the broadcasters that you always want to leave yourself a little more room to be able to go up. Because let's say there's a fumble and he's returning it and you're elevating, and then let's say he gets tripped up and he fumbles it and it's going the other way. You always want to have room to bring it up further. You never want to reach peak excitement, because then you have nowhere else to go. And then you have to come down and it sounds like it doesn't match. It doesn't match. But you definitely don't want to do it like we saw yesterday. You don't want to do it game 1, inning 1 of the season. Come on. As if it was the clincher, as if it was the home run sending the Indians to the World Series. No, it wasn't the case. And it just did not match game 1 of the season, and the broadcasters are out of their minds. And I was thinking to myself as I was watching it, what are they going to do game 2, game 22, game 100? They've got nowhere to go because they're just absolutely losing it. They probably needed a cold bath after the game. And then I saw the next highlight, same thing. Whether it was the Indians game, the White Sox game, the Mariners, whatever, it didn't matter. There were very few. And by the way, I will say, NBC did a fine job yesterday, both with their Pirates-Mets telecast and last night with their Diamondbacks-Dodgers. And in my opinion, and I saw it on X, a lot of people agreed, but because they did not try to make themselves the action. They didn't try to make themselves the center of attention. And by the way, if you have a comment, leave me a comment if you have any broadcasting related questions or sports questions. And also, if you have never been here before, why not subscribe? That way you can keep up to date on what we talk about. We try to make you a better sportscaster and a better sports fan here at the Sportscasters Club. But I really liked yesterday how NBC started off with Bob Costas. He's just been so good, and he's such a classic baseball broadcaster in this case, but broadcaster in general. Just a big fan of his. He's as close to a perfect sports broadcaster as you can get, in my opinion. And so I liked how last night, the Dodger game, they started with him. But NBC, fine job getting back into regular baseball broadcasting, and I thought really did a fantastic job last night. But histrionics, this is what we saw from some of those broadcasters who were just going crazy in the first 15 minutes of their season. Histrionics, behavior that is excessive, excessively dramatic, theatrical, emotional, and used to gain attention. I mean, that's really the case. That's really the truth, because it's all used to gain attention. It's all used to attract that casual viewer that's going to be turned on by your loudness, your attitude, your histrionics in this case. And that's certainly never the type of broadcaster that I was or that my students are. And I mean, I mentioned Bob Costas, certainly not how he would approach it. So just important to keep in mind the histrionics of it, certainly not what a broadcaster should be doing. And so we try to take lessons from that. And if you're a baseball fan, hopefully you can tell when a broadcaster is matching the moment rather than getting overwhelmed by the moment. All right, we move along today. The two high-profile baseball money fights that I mentioned. One is really sad. That's the next one. This one has been brewing for quite a while. Since Frank Thomas played in 2005 for the White Sox, seems like that relationship has truly been fractured. Frank Thomas suing his former team, the White Sox, and it really comes down to the fact that he says they used his name and number on a City Connect jersey that they sold. They filed the complaint. It's going to be held in May. The hearing is going to be in May. I mean, this is obviously sad, but the White Sox and Thomas did not have a good parting of ways. They invoked a clause in his final year to claw back some money based on his production at the time. He then had an injury, which he disagreed with, and he had a suit that was settled. And it was not a great way for him to go out, being one of, if not the most notable and the best all-time White Sox player, one of the top few. But that's sad to see that. So that came out a couple days ago. And then yesterday, the one that I think is even more sad, Alec Bohm of the Phillies suing his own parents. This one, anyone who's a parent, this hurts. Anyone who's a child probably has a hard time identifying with this. But apparently Bohm said that his parents were managing his affairs, his money, his everything from his baseball career. And apparently he went looking into it and found some inconsistencies. I'll take myself out of there so you can read it. But they say there was no wrongdoing. But this one is probably going to get worse before it gets better. But aside from the money part of it, and because we see a lot of athletes who have financial issues, many of them over the past 20, 30 years end up destitute or bankrupt or involved with shady people. But certainly you think you can trust your parents, and who knows where the truth lies. We will see who was right, who was wrong, were there any miscommunications. But more than any of that, this to me was just sad. Remember that game a couple years ago where Bohm playing at Citi Field against the Mets? I think he had 3 or 4 errors in the game, and that was painful to watch. But this one, you just feel bad because it tugs at your heartstrings whenever you have a contentious situation between parents and child, because anyone who is a parent can understand something's wrong there. But I just thought that was ironic because there's been these two high profile money fights in the past week in baseball. So that's that story. But we're going to finish on this note. This was the baseball prediction. The baseball prediction that I made to a buddy the other day and also made here on the program. I do think the New York Mets are going to have more wins than the New York Yankees. And Yankee fans obviously will go crazy about that because they're not used to anyone thinking they're going to do anything better than them. And we went through the rankings a couple days ago. We went through the odds of which team has the best odds of winning the World Series. The Dodgers are obviously number 1. And really you can't base anything on the opening day, but obviously Mets, Yankees, and Dodgers all with wins on opening day. But here are some of the reasons that I think the Mets are going to have a better season than the Yankees, have more wins. Obviously, their improved starting pitching, for me, is the most important one. It all starts there. More consistent offense. there was a lot of fear because of losing Alonso, but when you replaced it with the consistency of Polanco, Semien, Bichette, and Robert, you're not going to get probably a 40 home run guy, but maybe you get 4 20 home run guys. Just by the math, that might end up being pretty good for the New York Mets. A little bit more consistent, a little bit more depth top to bottom in the lineup when you have Semien hitting 7th, when he's a guy that could easily be hitting right at the top of your order. So that's one of the reasons. Getting on base, I think that's going to play into it too. Some of those guys getting on base. I mean, Alonso did that well as well, but I think having more depth in that regard. Solid defense up the middle when you're talking about Lindor and Semien up the middle. Alvarez improved behind the dish, and then Robert in center field. That could be a really nice defense. They always used to say you want to be strong up the middle, and I think the Mets certainly are. Pete Alonso made some improvements at first base. Polanco, whether it's Polanco, Vientos, they're going to have to continue to improve as well. But I think just in terms of overall depth and depth up the middle, the Mets certainly are strong. And I do think Steve Cohen's going to have a willingness to spend. I think I mentioned the other day, I think when you got 3/4 of the way through the offseason and the Mets had lost Alonso and had not yet significantly made up the difference, there was a lot of backbiting going on around the New York Mets. Fans were unhappy, and I wouldn't be surprised if that sticks with Cohen. And he has shown he'll go out and spend. I mean, you've seen it just in the last few years. And then obviously they make the big change. McNeil's gone, Nimmo's gone, Alonso's gone, and they bring in this new cast of characters. I will admit, when they announced the starting lineup yesterday, my mind immediately went back to that 1993 New York Mets team where everyone thought they brought in all the talent from everywhere else, and everyone thought this was going to be the Mets year when they brought in Eddie Murray, and they had Bobby Bonilla and Vince Coleman and Brett Saberhagen. And it turns out to be, I mean, I have the book over here on the shelf, the worst team money could buy. Jeff Torborg, the manager, it was a terrible team. The chemistry was terrible. Was that the year that they threw the firecracker in the locker room? Was that Vince Coleman or Saberhagen? I'd have to reread the book. But I admit my mind did go to that a little bit when they read the lineup yesterday. Nonetheless, I do think the Mets are going to have a solid year. If you have any comments, let me know if they're baseball related or broadcasting related, and I'll answer them here on the stream. But I do think they're going to have a willingness to spend, especially if things are going better this year than they did last year. I mean, midway through last year, everybody thought the Mets were destined for the playoffs, and then they utterly collapsed and everything turned around, and now they have virtually a new team with the pitching that I mentioned, and also with the new cast of characters that span the middle of their lineup, which started off nicely yesterday against Skeens and O'Neill Cruz just having a tough time in center field. But that's why I think the Mets are going to have a better record than the Yankees, and the internet is forever. So if you're a baseball fan, the internet's forever. I just made the prediction. I made it the other day as well. We'll be able to see in 6 months if I was correct. Yanks are going to probably make the postseason too. Don't get me wrong. And they're going to go out and spend like they always do. But I think the Mets will, and I'm going to go out on a limb. So that's what I say for today. But I hope you enjoyed our discussion of baseball broadcasters out of control. And I truly hope that tomorrow we tune into the highlights, and today we tune into the games. And when we turn on the games, we see broadcasters that are a little more measured, matching the moment of game 2 of the season, rather than screaming and blowing their tops in the second inning over a home run. It's great, yes, when you see a rookie in his first plate appearance, or in the case of McConaughey in Detroit getting 4 hits, awesome. Or in the case of Benj in New York hitting a home run his first game, awesome. And by the way, the Mets, the NBC broadcast was not one of the ones that went crazy. But when I tuned in and I saw first inning, guy hits a home run and the broadcaster is going bonkers, losing his mind, just made no sense to me. In the first inning of a game, yes, you can get excited. You can get excited. You can bring the enthusiasm. If you're one of these young hipsters, you can even bring the attitude or your cliche phrase. But let's keep in mind, it's the opening game of the season, or now it's the opening week of the season. You don't have to be going crazy like it's Joe Carter hitting a home run to win the World Series. That's not the case. You don't have to go crazy like it's Bobby Thompson hitting the shot heard around the world. This is game 1, inning 1, week 1, whatever the case might be. That's the difference with baseball. Football, you've got the 17 games. Everyone has a little bit more intensity and more importance. The beauty of baseball is that it's your constant companion for 6 months. You tune in, it's there on television, on radio. It's that constant friend that you've got for the summer, for the season. And part of that is that you maintain that even keel generally. You get excited when there's a home run. You get down. You get despondent when the team goes into a funk or your star goes into a slump. But you've got to keep in mind, that's the difference with baseball. The highs and lows stay in that band, stay in a pretty consistent band. Whereas the other sports, you can get a little higher and low. Kevin Harlan, his broadcast style is more appropriate for those styles where there's more intensity. But if you're a baseball broadcaster, there's no way first inning, second inning of a game, you should be maxing yourself out, going absolutely crazy and bonkers, because it's ridiculous and it doesn't fit. So leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Maybe I'm just being a boomer. Get off my lawn. Like I say, I'm not a boomer. I still don't want you on my lawn, though. But let me know what you think. Again, subscribe to the channel, and we'll touch on issues like this as we follow the baseball season. We've got the college basketball season in full swing right now. At the end, obviously the most exciting time, Sweet 16 going on yesterday, tonight, and that'll be exciting to watch too. Completely different dynamic, basketball broadcasting versus baseball. And we talk about all of that. If you saw the video yesterday, we talked about the 1998 Yankees. Were they the best Major League Baseball team of all time? Watch that video and let me know what you think. And we also discussed this week Tiger Woods and his comeback. Is he going to be playing in the Masters? We discussed that, and I gave you my opinion on that in the video a couple days ago. Again, my name is Rick. Thank you for joining us. If we've not met, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us live on a Friday. We'll catch you next time, everybody. Bye-bye.